The Netherrealm did not know mercy. It knew stone and chain blood and ash, the geometry of suffering made manifest. Shang Tsung stood at the center of a ritual circle carved into bedrock older than kingdoms, his robes the color of old wine and shadow. Beside him, Quan Chi traced sigils in the air with skeletal precision, each gesture pulling threads of green light from the screaming dark. "The champion we seek," Shang Tsung said, voice smooth as poison, "exists beyond the framework of fate itself." Quan Chi's pale fingers completed the final rune. No soul signature, no destiny thread. The spell will read it as an absolute void. Perfect. Shang Tsung smiled. An absence becomes an anchor. Pillars of bone and iron ringed the circle, each wrapped in chains that had held gods and monsters. Now they trembled. The spell was simple in theory. Locate the strongest being outside the realm's jurisdiction, bind it to their frequency, and pull. In practice, they were fishing for myth with a net made of death. The ritual ignited, soul light exploded upward through layers of reality like a spear through silk. The chains went taut, screaming metal against impossible tension. Runes blazed white-hot. Shang Tsung felt the spell lock onto something no lock onto nothing. An emptiness so profound, the universe itself tried to fill it. "It's working," Quan Chi hissed. Above them, dimensions folded wrong. Earthrealm's night sky split open without warning. Rain hammered the industrial district, turning asphalt into black mirrors. Warehouse lights flickered and died as the rift carved itself across the clouds, a wound in space itself. It pulsed with sick green radiance, leaking cold that had nothing to do with temperature. This was the cold of the grave, of the space between heartbeats, where death waits patient. A figure fell through. No dramatic descent. No trailing fire or thunder, just a man in a yellow suit and red gloves, white cape snapping once in the unnatural wind, dropping toward the ground like a disappointed thought. He landed in a crouch that barely disturbed the puddles, straightened and looked around, with the expression of someone who'd gotten off at the wrong bus stop. "Huh," Saitama said. "Where's the grocery store?" The rift pulsed behind him, angry and green and wrong. He glanced back at it with mild irritation, the way one might regard a broken vending machine. 3 blocks away, Johnny Cage was having the worst night of his career, and his career included a film where he'd fought his own stunt double for 45 minutes of screen time. He pressed himself against a warehouse wall phone in one hand, the other on his sunglasses, even though it was midnight and raining. "Sonya, I'm telling you, the sky literally tore open. Like budget interdimensional crisis level special effects, except real and somehow worse." "Cage?" Sonya Blade's voice crackled through the connection, all business. "Special Forces is en route. Do not engage." "Engage what? I don't even know what I'm looking at. There's a guy in a cape standing under the demon portal like he's waiting for a cab." "A guy?" "Yeah. Bald. Looks bored. This is either the universe's weirdest Tuesday, or I'm having a stroke." Lightning split the sky, not from the storm, but from a rival. Raiden materialized in a cascade of white-blue electricity boots touching wet pavement without a sound. His eyes found the rift first, then the figure beneath it. The Thunder God's expression shifted through confusion, caution, and something close to dread in the span of a breath. "This should not be," Raiden said quietly. Johnny lowered his phone. "Oh, good, the god is confused too. That's super reassuring." Raiden approached slowly, each step deliberate. Power crackled around his hands, not threatening, but ready. He'd felt dimensional breaches before, knew the signature of Netherrealm magic, the weight of Outworld intrusion. the distinct flavor of every realm's touch against reality. This was all of them, and none of them. A blank space where something massive should register. "You," Raiden called out. "State your origin." Saitama turned, blinked. "Japan. Your realm. Which realm do you serve?" "I don't serve anyone. I'm a hero for fun." As Saitama looked up at the rift again, frowning now. "Is that thing supposed to be there because it's kind of loud?" It was loud. Not in sound, but in presence, a pressure against the mind, like fingers pressing into soft clay. Johnny felt it as nausea. Raiden felt it as wrongness, a crack in the order he'd sworn to protect. The rift wasn't just open, it was hungry, pulling at the edges of things, trying to widen. "The breach must be sealed," Raiden said more to himself than anyone else. But first, thunder rolled, wrong direction, wrong rhythm. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in a second. Shadows peeled themselves off the warehouse walls and took shape, twisted figures wrapped in grave cloth and chain eyes burning with borrowed malice. Quan Chi's foot soldiers sent through as scouts, as bait. Johnny swore and dropped into a fighting stance. "Oh, come on!" The nearest creature lunged at Saitama with claws that had torn through tank armor in previous encounters. Saitama looked at it with the expression of a man who'd found a fly in his drink. He flicked his wrist. The creature's head snapped back with a sound like a cracking whip. It hit the ground 10 feet away, unconscious, but breathing. The others paused, instinct warring with compulsion. "I just want to buy groceries," Saitama said, and there was something in his voice, not anger, but the edge of annoyance that comes before anger. "I had a coupon. It expires today." Raiden stared. Johnny's mouth hung open. The remaining creatures hesitated in a way dead things animated by magic should not be capable of hesitation. Then Quan Chi's voice slithered through the rift like smoke. "Test complete." The creatures collapsed as one chains rattling. But they didn't fall unconscious. They fell empty like puppets with cut strings. Then their bodies began to smoke, green light pouring from eyes and mouths as Quan Chi yanked their animating force back through the rift. A fatal extraction. They'd been knocked out, Saitama had held back, but the sorcerer had turned mercy into murder. The implications settled over Raiden like frost. "You stand outside the chain," the Thunder God said slowly. "Outside destiny, outside death's claim, outside the very laws that bind these realms together." Saitama adjusted his cape. "I stand in the rain." "Can someone please tell me where the nearest store is?" Behind them, the rift pulsed again, and deep in the Netherrealm, Shang Tsung began to laugh. The bodies lay in puddles, steam rising from their emptied shells. Sonya Blade arrived with a tactical team seconds too late to prevent whatever had happened, and just in time to see a bald man in a costume inspecting his glove, like he'd gotten dirt on it. "Secure the perimeter," she ordered, voice clipped. Her team fanned out weapons trained on the rift that still carved the sky open. She approached Raiden, who hadn't moved since the creatures fell. "Thunder God, situation report." "Unknown," Raiden said, and the admission cost him something. "The breach originates from Netherrealm. The individual," he gestured toward Saitama, "came through it. But he is not their agent." "How do you know?" "Because they tried to kill him, and failed." Sonya's eyes narrowed. She'd worked with Raiden long enough to recognize when the god was rattled. That alone was worth more than any tactical briefing. She turned to assess the stranger, hand resting on her sidearm, more from habit than real expectation. It would matter. Saitama had wandered over to a streetlight, squinting up at the signs. Does this district have a 24-hour place? The sale started at midnight. Johnny Cage, who'd been keeping a cautious 15 feet back, couldn't help himself. Dude, demon portal, dead cultist guys, Thunder God looking like he needs a drink. And you're worried about what expired coupons? They expire at 6 a.m., Saitama corrected. It's currently, he checked a cheap digital watch, 12:43, so I have about 5 hours. Right, yeah, that's the priority here. Johnny looked at Sonya. Is this real life? Are we in real life right now? Before anyone could answer, the air changed. Not temperature, not pressure, something deeper. The quality of existence itself shifted like reality taking a breath. Flames traced themselves into being gold, old and red and ancient, forming a circle on the rain-slicked ground. They burned without heat, without fuel, without permission from physics. Liu Kang stepped through. The fire god wore his power differently than Raiden wore thunder. Where Raiden crackled with barely contained force, Liu Kang moved with the certainty of someone who'd rewritten the rules and knew every word. His eyes held embers. His presence made the rift in the sky look small. Raiden, he said, and his voice carried the weight of eons compressed into syllables. You were right to summon me. I sent no summons. The new era itself did. Liu Kang's gaze moved to Saitama, who'd turned to look at the fire with mild interest. This is the variable. Saitama raised a hand slightly. Hi. Do you know where? You should not exist in this timeline, Liu Kang continued, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. Your presence here is a tear in causality itself. The longer you remain, the more reality strains to accommodate what cannot be accommodated. Cool. Saitama lowered his hand. Can you send me back? I really do need to get to that sale. Johnny laughed a short bark of hysteria. Oh my God, he's serious. He's completely serious. Liu Kang studied Saitama the way one might study an equation that shouldn't balance, but does. You are not bothered by the implications. Of what? That your existence threatens multiple realms. That you are in effect a walking apocalypse held at bay only by the universe's reluctance to acknowledge you. Saitama scratched his head. That sounds complicated. I just want to go home. As do I wish to send you. Liu Kang glanced at the rift, expression darkening. But the portal is not a doorway. It is a wound. And it was opened with specific intent. Someone sought to pull you here. Which means someone has used for a variable that reality itself cannot predict. Again, Sonya, who'd been processing this with the practiced calm of someone who'd fought in interdimensional tournaments, spoke up. Can you close it? Not while it feeds. Liu Kang raised a hand toward the rift. Flames danced across his fingers, reading something the others couldn't see. It consumes souls. Every death in proximity to it, every act of violence under its influence strengthens the breach. It is a cancer that grows on suffering. Then we stop feeding it, Raiden said. Evacuate the district. Contain all hostile forces. That will slow it. Not stop it. Liu Kang turned back to Saitama. The sorcerers who opened this gate did so because they wanted something beyond fate's reach. They wanted you. And now they have you exactly where the rift can anchor to your presence. So I'm bait? Saitama said. You are the prize and the trap, and possibly the solution, though. I do not yet see how. Liu Kang's expression softened by a fraction. I do not ask you to fight, not ask you to, but I must ask you to remain until we understand what we are facing. Saitama considered this. off his cape. In the distance, sirens wailed as special forces mobilized. The rift pulsed its sickly green heartbeat against the clouds. "Will it take long?" he finally asked. "I cannot say." "Because the sale—" "I understand the urgency of limited time offers," Liu Kang said, and there might have been the ghost of humor in his voice. "I will do everything in my power to return you before dawn." Saitama sighed. "Okay. But if I miss it, I'm blaming the demons." Johnny Cage looked at Sonya. "I want it on record that this is the weirdest op I've ever been part of, and I once punched a four-armed prince." The rift screamed. Somewhere in its depths, something laughed. And Liu Kang closed his eyes, reading the threads of causality, like a physician reading a terminal diagnosis. "We have very little time," he said. "They are already moving to the next phase." The rift pulsed 3 times in rapid succession, each throb pushing cold deeper into the district. Liu Kang's head snapped toward it, reading something in the rhythm that made his jaw tighten. "Incoming," Raiden said unnecessarily. He could feel them, souls twisted into weapons flesh, reshaped by necromancy. "Multiple hostiles." Sonya barked orders into her comm. "All units defensive positions. Civilians are clear, but we've got probable Netherrealm forces manifesting." They came through the shadows, not the rift. That was Quan Chi's signature. Why waste energy on dramatic portals when darkness itself could serve as a door? The creatures lurched into being at the edges of streetlights, 8 of them wrapped in grave shrouds that stank of old earth and older magic. Their faces were masks of stitched leather eyes, burning green behind ragged slits. One held a cleaver made of bone. Another carried chains that writhed like living things. They moved with the terrible purpose of the dead. Given orders, "Kill the variable test," his limits report back to the master. The first one rushed Saitama with surprising speed. He didn't dodge, just turned, watched it come, and caught the bone cleaver between 2 fingers, like someone plucking a dropped coin from a table. The creature yanked, trying to free its weapon. The cleaver didn't budge. "You guys with the demons?" Saitama asked. The creature screamed, not in pain, but command, and the others charged as one. Sonya's team opened fire bullets, punching through dead flesh without effect. Raiden's lightning carved one in half, but it kept crawling. Johnny hit another with a shadow kick that should have shattered ribs. It staggered, adjusted, came on. Saitama sighed. What happened next was almost too fast to see. He moved through the attackers like water through a sieve, each touch precise. A tap to a temple, a flick to a shoulder, a light push to a center of mass. None of the blows looked particularly violent. None of them looked like they should matter. Every creature he touched dropped instantly, bodies hitting pavement in a rough circle around him. Unconscious, breathing, intact. The silence that followed was profound. "Okay," Johnny said into the quiet. "Okay, that was... Did anyone else see that?" Sonya lowered her weapon slowly. "Thunder God." Raiden approached the nearest body, crouched, checked for a pulse with the air of someone confirming an impossibility. Alive. All of them. Incapacitated, but whole. He looked up at Saitama. "You pulled every blow." "They're just guys in weird clothes," Saitama said. "I'm not going to kill people for rushing me." "They are not people," Liu Kang said quietly, still watching the rift. "Not anymore. Quan Chi has reshaped their souls, bound them to his will. They are prisoners in their own flesh. Still not killing them. I did not suggest you should." Liu Kang's tone carried something that might have been approval. But the sorcerer anticipated your restraint. The bodies began to convulse. Green light erupted from their eyes, their mouths the seams of their stitched masks. Not the light of life, but of extraction souls being yanked from their housings like teeth pulled by pliers. The creatures spasmed once, twice, then went utterly still. The light streamed upward toward the rift in thin, screaming threads. "No," Raiden breathed. Saitama's expression changed. Not to anger, he still looked more tired than anything, but something hardened around his eyes. "What just happened?" "Soul theft," Liu Kang said, voice gone cold as winter stone. "Quan Chi has taken what remained of them. Your mercy became his material. He has used their deaths to feed the rift and to send us a message." "What message?" "That he can turn any outcome into fuel. That restraint itself can be weaponized." The fire god's hands curled into fists, small flames dancing between his knuckles. This is the nature of the enemy we face. They do not fight to win battles. They fight to corrupt the very concept of victory. Saitama looked at the empty husks, then up at the rift. His face remained expressionless, but his shoulders had gone tense in a way they hadn't been during the actual fight. When he spoke, his voice was flat and quiet. "I don't like this." "None of us do," Sonya said. "No, I mean," Saitama gestured vaguely at the bodies. "The fighting is fine. People want to fight whatever. But this, making them die just to prove a point," he looked at Liu Kang. "That's not fighting. That's just being an asshole." Johnny made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "He's not wrong. He is correct," Raiden said, standing. "Quan Chi delights in such cruelty. It is his art form. He will take any scenario and find the way to maximize suffering within it." "Then we need to stop giving him scenarios," Liu Kang said. "The rift feeds on death, yes, but more specifically, it feeds on death within the context of combat. Every battle fought in its presence strengthens the breach. Every soul claimed under its shadow feeds the sorcerer's design." Saitama tilted his head slightly. "So don't fight near it." Would that it were so simple. The rift is anchored to you now, whether by accident or design. Where you go, it follows, or rather its influence follows. We cannot simply walk away. "But you said someone wanted me here." Saitama's tone was patient, the way someone might explain something to a particularly confusing vending machine. "So if they wanted me here and I'm here, doesn't that mean they got what they wanted? Why do more?" Liu Kang opened his mouth, closed it, then smiled without humor. "Because they did not simply want you present. They want you useful. Or failing that they want to study how reality bends around you." He paused. "Or failing even that they wish to use you as an anchor point to destabilize the new era itself. That's a lot of backup plans. Shang Tsung is many things. Short-sighted is not among them." The rift shuddered, and for a moment something massive moved behind it. A shadow too large to be human, too deliberate to be natural, watching, evaluating. Saitama looked at it with the expression of someone who'd found a bug in their apartment and was deciding whether to deal with it now or later. "Okay," he said. "So how do we close the portal?" Liu Kang and Raiden exchanged glances. The fire god spoke carefully. "That is what we must determine. But first, we need to understand the parameters of what we're facing, which means they'll keep testing." Saitama finished, "Sending things to fight me, seeing what works." "Yes. And every fight makes the portal stronger." "Precisely." Saitama was quiet for 3 heartbeats. Then, "This is the worst grocery trip I've ever had. Despite everything, the corpses, the rift, the weight of cosmic imbalance." Johnny Cage laughed. It was brief and slightly hysterical, but genuine. "Welcome to Earthrealm," he said. "We specialize in ruining people's shopping plans." They relocated to what Sonya's team called a secure perimeter, which in practice meant a warehouse roof with good sightlines and questionable structural integrity. The rift hung in the sky like a second moon, green and wrong and patient. Liu Kang stood at the roof's edge, flames, tracing idle patterns around his forearms as he studied the wound in reality. Saitama walked up beside him, cape still dripping from the rain. "That thing, the portal." "Yes. Can I just punch it closed?" Liu Kang turned to look at him, expression unreadable. Behind them, Raiden stopped mid-conversation with Sonya. Johnny, who'd been cataloging the night's events on his phone for what he called insurance purposes, went still. "You wish to strike the rift itself," Liu Kang said slowly. "Yeah. I mean, if it's the problem, and I can hit pretty hard, seems like the obvious solution. The rift is not a physical object. Most things aren't until you hit them hard enough." There was a beat of silence. Then Liu Kang's mouth quirked just slightly. "I cannot fault the logic. And truthfully, I am curious." He gestured toward the rift. "Please, attempt it." Raiden moved forward. "Liu Kang, if he destabilizes, then we will know what destabilization looks like. Better to learn now than during a crisis." The fire god's voice carried absolute certainty. "Besides, I do not believe he will damage anything that can be damaged. He's too precise for that." Saitama looked at the rift, judging distance. It hung maybe 50 feet up directly over what used to be a parking lot. "Okay. Stand back a little." He didn't have a running start, didn't wind up or gather power or do any of the theatrical preparation that usually preceded world-shaking attacks. He just drew his fist back to his shoulder, casual as someone knocking on a door, and threw. The air screamed. The punch itself was invisible, too fast, too clean. But its wake carved a tunnel of displaced atmosphere that turned rain into vapor and made the warehouse roof groan. The impact hit the rift dead center with a sound like a bell the size of a continent being struck underwater. Reality rippled. Not metaphorically. Space itself warped outward from the impact point, invisible waves. Concentric circles of distortion that spread like rings in a pond. The rift shuddered its edges, flexing and bending, green light flickering as if someone had jostled its foundation. For one impossible moment, it seemed to compress, to curl inward around the force of the blow. Then it stabilized. The ripples faded. The rift pulsed once, twice, settling back into its sick rhythm. Unchanged, unbroken, still hungry. Saitama lowered his fist, frowning. "Huh. Fascinating," Liu Kang breathed. "You struck causality itself. The universe felt it, I felt it. But the rift endures because it is not matter or energy. It is a gap in the rules. You cannot punch absence. I've punched weirder things. I do not doubt it. But this is a different category of problem." Liu Kang moved closer to the edge, eyes distant as he traced invisible threads. The rift exists between moments, between laws. It is not here or there, but rather the space where here and there failed to connect properly. To close it, we do not need force. We need consequence. Raiden joined them, his earlier concern replaced by grim understanding. "You speak of the combat seal." "I do." "Wait," Sonya said, coming forward with Johnny trailing behind her. "You have a way to close this thing." "We have a method," Liu Kang corrected. "Whether it works depends on the factors we cannot fully control." He turned to face them all, and his voice took on the weight of pronouncement. The rift feeds on violence, yes, but specifically on violence that carries meaning. Combat is ritual. Blood is contract. In the old ways, before I reshaped the timeline, such rifts could only be sealed by what was called a combat seal. A series of sanctioned battles that satisfy the universe's need for balance. "You want us to fight," Saitama said. "I want the cosmos to receive proof that order still functions. That even in the presence of an anomaly." He nodded toward Saitama. "The fundamental rules still apply. Life against death. Will against entropy. The battles must be witnessed, must be completed according to form, and must carry genuine stakes." Johnny raised his hand. "Quick question, how is making the portal feeding problem worse, by fighting near it, supposed to help?" "Because these battles would not feed the rift. They would feed the seal." Liu Kang conjured flame between his palms, shaping it into a circle that rotated slowly. "Think of it as fighting fire with fire. The sorcerers opened this breach using stolen power and corrupted ritual. We close it by honoring what ritual truly means. Conflict resolved, not prolonged. Victory earned, not extracted." "How many battles?" Raiden asked. "Enough to generate sufficient weight. 3 at minimum. 5 would be preferable." Liu Kang's flames guttered out. "And they cannot be arbitrary. Each opponent must have genuine cause to fight, and each resolution must be clean. No soul theft, no corruption, just combat outcome and acceptance." Saitama looked skeptical. "And if I just knock them out fast?" "Then the seal gains nothing. The universe requires investment time, effort, risk. A battle that ends in 3 seconds carries no weight in the cosmic ledger." Liu Kang met his eyes. "I know this frustrates you. You wish for efficiency, but we are bound by older mathematics here. So I have to fight slow. You have to fight with intention. Show the cosmos that even you who exist beyond its normal parameters can still participate in its fundamental exchange." Saitama was quiet, thinking. The rift pulsed its heartbeat above them. Somewhere in the city, sirens wailed. Finally, "Will it get me home before 6 a.m.? "If we begin now and move efficiently, yes. And these people I'm fighting, they started this. The sorcerers did. Those you face will be—" Liu Kang paused, choosing words carefully. "Complicated? Some will be enemies. Some will be those who see you as a threat that must be tested. Some will be manipulated into conflict. But all will be legitimate combatants under the old laws. No more tricks like before. No one dying after I pull my punches. I will ensure it." There was iron in Liu Kang's voice. "The combat seal is sacred. Even Quan Chi would not dare corrupt it directly, lest he invite retribution from forces that predate the realms themselves." Saitama looked at his glove, then at the rift, then at Liu Kang. "Okay. But if this doesn't work, I'm trying to punch it again." "Fair enough." Raiden stepped forward, lightning crackling softly around his form. "I will prepare a sanctified ground. Neutral territory where the battles can occur without collateral damage." "Make it quickly," Liu Kang said. "The sorcerers know what we plan. They will send their champions to disrupt or co-opt the ritual." He looked at Saitama. "You wished for efficiency. I am sorry, but the universe is rarely efficient. It prefers theater." "Great," Saitama said flatly. "I hate theater." Johnny couldn't help himself. "Buddy, you're wearing a cape." For the first time that night, Saitama looked genuinely offended. It's practical, keeps the rain off. Right, the rain. That's what capes are for. Lightning split the sky. Raiden already working. The rift pulsed in answer, and deep within its depths, something vast and patient continued to watch. The combat seal was about to begin, and with it a series of battles that would determine whether reality bent or broke. The sanctified ground took shape in an abandoned subway station 3 levels below street noise and curious eyes. Raiden had worked quickly, carving runes into concrete with controlled lightning, each symbol burning with pale blue permanence. The space hummed with old power, the kind that predated cities and would outlast them. Liu Kang stood at the center, hands behind his back, watching the final preparations. The first trial must set the tone. It requires someone who embodies the old ways, someone who fights not from ambition, but from purpose. "You speak of Hanzo," Raiden said. "I do. He will not come willingly. His vendetta is his own, not yours to direct." "No." Liu Kang's expression was grave. "But he will come when he senses what waits here. Vengeance has its own magnetism." Saitama sat on a broken bench near the platform edge, looking at his watch for the 3rd time in as many minutes. Sonya and Johnny had taken positions along the upper walkway, observers required by the ritual's parameters. The fire god had been very specific. Witnesses made the combat matter. Empty victories counted for nothing. "How long does this usually take?" Saitama asked. "The summoning or the battle? Either." "That depends entirely on—" Liu Kang stopped. His head turned sharply toward the northern tunnel. "He comes." The temperature dropped 15 degrees in 3 seconds. Not cold like winter, but cold like the space between stars, like the absence of warmth rather than its opposite. Flames erupted in the darkness, not Liu Kang's gold and red, but hellfire yellow-white and writhing with malice. Scorpion emerged from shadow like a wound opening. He wore his vengeance as armor, yellow and black, scorched with centuries of rage. The mask hid his face, but not his eyes, which burned with light that had nothing to do with life. Behind him, chains dragged across stone, leaving scorch marks. His very presence was an accusation. "Fire god." The voice rasped like metal on bone. "You call me to witness?" "To participate," Liu Kang corrected. "The combat seal requires champions. You are among the greatest." Scorpion's gaze moved to Saitama, who'd stood up and was brushing dust off his cape with mild annoyance. The specter went very still, reading something, or failing to read something in that bald head and bland expression. "This is your anomaly," Scorpion said. "The variable that threatens the realms." "He is not a threat," Raiden interjected. "He is a complication. Complications kill just as surely as enemies." Scorpion's hand moved to his kunai. "I have seen worlds burn because gods grew careless, because they allowed chaos to fester in the name of mercy." "I'm not chaos," Saitama said. "I'm just trying to get groceries." The chains rattled. "You mock me." "I'm really not. I actually do need to buy vegetables." Scorpion's flames intensified, heat washing over the platform in visible waves. "You stand in a sanctified circle, face a warrior of the Shirai Ryu, and speak of produce." "Well, yeah. That's why I'm here. To get this done so I can leave." Something in Scorpion's posture shifted. The rage was still there. It was always there, a permanent companion. But now it mixed with confusion. He'd expected fear, or at least respect for the gravity of the moment. This indifference, was worse than either. Liu Kang, had Scorpion said, not taking his eyes off Saitama. What is he? Beyond my full understanding, the fire god admitted. But he is here, and he is willing to participate in the seal. Will you face him? To test whether he deserves to exist in this timeline, yes. The kunai came free chain coiling around Scorpion's arm like a living thing. I will determine his worth through trial by combat. Then begin, Liu Kang said, and stepped back beyond the circle. Scorpion moved first because that's what vengeance does, it strikes. The kunai flew with precision that came from 10,000 kills, the chain singing as it extended. Get over here. The spear punched through the space where Saitama's chest had been a microsecond earlier. Not because Saitama dodged with effort, but because he'd shifted his weight slightly, almost bored. The kunai clattered against stone behind him. Scorpion yanked the chain back and teleported in a burst of hellfire, appearing above and behind, with both feet aimed at Saitama's skull. It was a flawless execution of the technique, the kind of attack that had killed demons and demigods. Saitama tilted his head. The kick passed through empty air. He'd moved maybe 6 inches. Are you going to keep doing that? Saitama asked. Rage, pure distilled centuries-old rage, flooded through Scorpion's frame. He landed spun, lashed out with a combination that blurred even to Raiden's divine sight. Kunai elbow, chain sweep, fire blast, all flowing together in a sequence that had no breaks, no hesitation. Saitama avoided each strike by the smallest possible margin. Not fast, at least not visibly fast, just never quite where the attacks landed. Like trying to punch fog, except fog didn't look vaguely disappointed. You dishonor combat with your evasion, Scorpion snarled. You haven't asked me to fight. You've asked me to stand here while you try to hit me. Saitama sounded genuinely puzzled. There's a difference. Scorpion froze. It was such a simple observation delivered with such complete absence of mockery that it cut through rage like a blade through silk. The specter lowered his hands, fractionally, chains going slack. You do not fight. I don't want to hurt you. I am already dead. You cannot hurt what has been claimed by the Netherrealm. Pretty sure I could. Saitama scratched his head. But that seems rude. You're just doing your job, right? Testing people. Scorpion stood silent for 3 heartbeats. When he spoke, his voice carried something that might have been exhaustion. What are you, a guy who broke his limiter? That means nothing to me. Yeah, I get that a lot. Saitama glanced at Liu Kang. Do I have to actually hit him? Because he seems pretty committed to this, and I don't want to. Scorpion struck. Not with technique this time, but with pure, desperate fury, the kind that comes when a warrior realizes the universe has stopped making sense. Every attack he knew, every skill honed across lifetimes thrown at the bald man in the ridiculous costume. Saitama caught his wrist mid-punch. Not hard. Just... Their suddenly fingers wrapped around Scorpion's forearm with the immovability of continental bedrock. Sorry, Saitama said. But we're on a schedule. He pushed. Not a punch, not a strike. Just a light, almost apologetic push to Scorpion's shoulder. The specter flew backward 20 feet, hit the far wall with enough force to crack concrete, and slid down to a sitting position. He didn't get up. Not because he couldn't, but because his body had received a message his mind was still processing. You cannot win this. The hellfire around him guttered, dimmed. His chains lay still. Liu Kang stepped back into the circle flames, dancing along his arms as he read the outcome. The first battle is complete. The seal accepts it barely. Scorpion, you have fulfilled your role. I have failed? Scorpion said, voice hollow. No, you have confirmed what needed confirmation. Liu Kang looked at Saitama. As have you, though I wish you had allowed the combat to develop further. The seal requires investment. That battle carried weight only because of Scorpion's commitment, not yours. I told you I don't like hurting people. And that restraint may doom us all if the seal judges your battles insufficient. The fire god's tone wasn't angry, just deeply concerned. The next trial must carry more weight, more time, more genuine risk, even if the risk is not to you. Saitama looked at Scorpion, who was pulling himself to his feet with the slow movements of someone reassessing everything they thought they knew about power. He okay? His pride is wounded more than his body, Raiden said. For a warrior like Hanzo, that is the deeper injury. Scorpion met Saitama's eyes across the platform. The hatred was still there. It would always be there, but now it was mixed with something else. Recognition, maybe. Or just profound confusion. You stand outside the cycle, Scorpion said. Outside vengeance, outside death, outside meaning itself. I stand outside a grocery store if we don't hurry up. Despite everything, Johnny Cage laughed. It echoed strangely in the sanctified space, human and absurd and necessary. The first trial was complete. 4 more to go, and already the universe was struggling to comprehend what it had witnessed. The second trial didn't come to them. They had to go to it. Liu Kang led them through a portal of flame to a mountain pass somewhere in the Himalayas, or a realm that looked enough like the Himalayas that the difference didn't matter. Snow fell in steady silence, accumulating on ancient stones, carved with symbols that predated human language. The air tasted thin and clean and old. Why here? Sonya asked, breath misting. Because Kuai Liang is already here, Liu Kang said, gesturing toward a monastery perched on the cliff face above them. He tracks the same thing we do, the source of the rift's anchor. Sub-Zero does not rush to judgment. He investigates first. Saitama looked up at the monastery, then at the steep path leading to it, then back at Liu Kang. Can't you just teleport us up there? The approach is part of the trial. Patience. Respect for the journey. It's just walking. Yes. Liu Kang's expression was unreadable. Sometimes that is precisely what the universe requires. They climbed. Johnny complained about the cold. Raiden moved with the effortless grace of someone who didn't technically need to walk, but was being polite about it. Saitama trudged with the enthusiasm of a man stuck in an airport between connecting flights. Sub-Zero met them at the monastery gate. He stood like a piece of the winter itself mask, concealing all but his eyes, which were sharp and calculating. No dramatic entrance, no show of power, just a warrior who'd heard them coming and positioned himself accordingly. Behind him, the monastery courtyard was empty save for training equipment and snow. Fire God, Sub-Zero said, nodding once. Thunder God. I assume this concerns the disturbance? It does, Liu Kang confirmed. The rift. I have tracked 3 convergence points. The primary anchor moves, which is unusual. Rifts typically establish fixed positions. His gaze moved to Saitama, assessing. The anchor follows him. You've been tracking me, Saitama said. I've been tracking an anomaly in the fabric of realms. You happen to be at its center. Sub-Zero's tone carried no accusation, just fact. The question is whether you are cause or symptom. I got pulled through by accident. Sub-Zero's eyes narrowed slightly. I do not believe in accidents of this magnitude. Someone wanted you here. Someone prepared the ritual with precision. He looked at Liu Kang. You need something from me. The combat seal requires trials. You are. I know what the seal requires. I also know that combat for its own sake wastes resources. Sub-Zero turned and walked toward the courtyard. Come, we can talk while I show you what I've found. Johnny leaned toward Sonya. Is this a fight or a team-up? I'm losing track. Both, probably, she murmured back. The courtyard held a map, if you could call it that. More an arrangement of objects and symbols that somehow conveyed geographical relationships. Ice sculptures marked positions connected by lines, scraped in frost. Sub-Zero gestured to 3 specific points. The rift's influence spreads from wherever he stands. But the sorcerers who opened it have planted. Anchors is the wrong word. Call them resonators. Objects that amplify the rift's pull and feed it energy from other sources. He pointed to a formation that looked like a temple. One here in what remains of the old Shirai Ryu compound. Scorpion, who'd insisted on following despite his earlier humiliation, went very still. They desecrate sacred ground. They use what provides power. Your clan's grief is potent fuel. Sub-Zero's bluntness wasn't cruel, just efficient. The second is in an Outworld arena. The third, he paused. I have not located the third, but mathematics suggests it exists. Saitama had been watching the ice map with mild interest. So if we destroy those things, the portal gets weaker. In theory. In practice, destroying them while the rift remains open might cause cascading failure. Think of it as cutting support beams while the building still stands. Sub-Zero looked at him directly. You are strong. That much is obvious from how you carry yourself. But strength without strategy creates more problems than it solves. I usually just punch things until they stop being problems. And how often does that approach create new problems you must then punch? Saitama opened his mouth, closed it, then shrugged. Sometimes. Then perhaps alternative methods merit consideration. Sub-Zero moved to another section of the map. Liu Kang, you mentioned trials. I propose we investigate the resonators together. When we encounter resistance, and we will, that becomes your combat trial. Purpose-driven, tactical. The seal will accept battles that serve function over ritual. Liu Kang stroked his chin thoughtfully. The old texts do allow for creative interpretations. If the combat arises organically from pursuit of a greater good, then it carries weight the seal cannot deny. Sub-Zero nodded. This is more efficient than staging artificial battles. You would ally with the anomaly, Raiden asked. I would solve the problem in front of me with available resources. He is a resource. Sub-Zero's gaze returned to Saitama. Can you follow instructions, exercise restraint when needed, operate as part of a unit rather than a singular force? I mean, I was part of the Hero Association, kind of. That tells me nothing. He pulled every punch against Scorpion, Liu Kang offered. He shows more discipline than his appearance suggests. Sub-Zero studied Saitama for another long moment, reading something in his posture, his eyes, the way he stood. Finally, you don't want to hurt people. Not really, no. Even enemies. Especially not people who are just doing their jobs. The real bad guys, the monsters who hurt people for fun, yeah? Them I'll stop. But someone just following orders or testing me because they think they have to. Saitama shrugged again. That seems like punching down. Something shifted in Sub-Zero's stance. Not relaxation exactly, but recognition. You have a code, I guess. Good. That makes you predictable. I can work with predictable. Sub-Zero turned to the group. The nearest resonator is the Shirai Ryu compound 8 hours from here. We leave within the hour. Bring what you need for combat in confined spaces. Wait, Johnny said. That's it. No dramatic showdown, no testing each other's skills. Sub-Zero produced a small sphere of ice in his palm, perfectly formed, then crushed it to powder. I have observed him for the past 20 minutes. The way he breathes, how he distributes weight, the absence of defensive tension in someone standing before strangers who could be enemies. He let the ice dust fall. He could kill everyone in this courtyard before any of us completed a single technique. Testing him would be theatrical and pointless. Scorpion made a sound that might have been bitter agreement. So we cooperate, Sub-Zero concluded. We find the resonators, we fight whatever guards them. The seal accepts the combat as legitimate because it serves necessity. Liu Kang can monitor and ensure proper ritual compliance. Everyone achieves their goals with minimal waste. Liu Kang smiled, small but genuine. The Lin Kuei always did value efficiency. We value survival. Currently, survival requires this alliance. Sub-Zero looked at Saitama. Do you agree to these terms? Saitama checked his watch, still 5 hours until the sale ended. Yeah, okay. As long as we keep moving. Then we have an accord. Sub-Zero began gathering his equipment, movements precise and economical. One rule: when I say, stop, you stop. When I say, wait, you wait. Rushing into sorcerers' traps gets people killed in ways they don't come back from. Got it. Do you, because everything about you suggests you're used to being the strongest thing in any room? Saitama considered this seriously. Yeah, but that doesn't mean I'm used to being right about everything. You know the magic stuff. I'll follow your lead. Sub-Zero nodded once, satisfied. Then to the group. Prepare quickly. The sorcerers know we're coming. They've had hours to fortify. As they dispersed to ready themselves, Raiden moved close to Liu Kang. This is highly irregular. The entire situation is irregular. Sub-Zero has simply acknowledged it faster than most. The fire god watched Saitama help Johnny with his gear, showing unexpected patience. And he is correct. Battles born from necessity carry more weight than staged ceremonies. Perhaps this is what the seal truly requires. Or perhaps we walk into exactly the trap the sorcerers intended. Perhaps. But standing still is also a choice, and right now, it's the worst one. The snow continued to fall, covering their tracks almost as fast as they made them. The Shirai Ryu compound existed as a scar on reality. Fire had claimed it decades ago, in one timeline centuries, in another Liu Kang's reshaping of history, had left certain wounds deliberately unhealed. The ruins stretched across a valley floor, charred wood and shattered stone, slowly being reclaimed by forest. At its heart, where the training hall once stood, green light pulsed with the sick rhythm of the rift's influence. Sub-Zero raised a fist, signaling halt. The group crouched behind a collapsed wall, surveying the approach. Shadows moved wrong around the resonator, bending at angles that made the eye ache. Wards, Sub-Zero said quietly. Soul-based. Designed to trigger on specific emotional frequencies. Can you disable them? Sonya asked. No, they're not barriers to bypass. They're traps to spring. He glanced at Scorpion, whose hands had unconsciously curled into fists. This location was chosen deliberately. Your grief powers the resonator. Every memory of your clan feeds it. Scorpion's voice came out rough as gravel. Then we destroy it quickly. Agreed. But expect. The world folded. One moment they crouched in ruins under gray sky. The next, they stood in a pristine room with walls made of mirrors and smoke. The transition was seamless and nauseating, like being turned inside out without the pain. Saitama blinked, looked around, and frowned. Illusion. Liu Kang said, flames igniting defensively around his hands. Shang Tsung's work. The sorcerer's voice drifted from everywhere and nowhere, smooth as poisoned honey. Welcome, Anomaly. I've prepared something special for you. A question, really. A test of what you value. The smoke cleared, revealing a scene: two groups of people separated by distance and circumstance. On the left, a dozen civilians huddled together. Men, women, children, bound by chains that glowed with Netherrealm magic. On the right, Scorpion knelt wrapped in so many soul bindings, he could barely breathe, slowly being drained. A classic dilemma, Shang Tsung continued. You can save one group, only one. The innocent many or the guilty warrior. Choose quickly. The spell-consuming Hanzo will kill him in 60 seconds. But breaking his chains means the civilians die. Their souls will feed the resonator. So tell me, hero, who deserves to live? Johnny swore. Sonya moved toward the civilians before Sub-Zero caught her arm, shaking his head. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. But the rules of the illusion would make it real if played wrong. Saitama walked forward, cape dragging through the smoke. Did you hear me? Shang Tsung's voice carried amusement now. 45 seconds. The warrior dies, or the innocents do. Classic trolley problem elevated by stakes. What does the variable choose when forced to? This is fake, Saitama said. The consequences will be real enough. That is the nature of my art. No, I mean... Saitama stopped in the center of the room, looking up at where he thought the voice was coming from. This whole thing is just you being a dick. Silence. Then, excuse me. You heard me. This isn't a real choice. You're just trying to make me feel bad, no matter what I pick. Saitama's tone was flat, almost bored. It's the same as those philosophy class things where the teacher acts like they're deep, but really they're just mean. You simplify what you cannot comprehend. I comprehend fine. You're setting up a no-win scenario to mess with my head. The people probably aren't real. Scorpion might not even be the real Scorpion. And even if any of it is real, you've already decided what happens. I'm just here so you can feel smart about it. Raiden had moved to examine one of the mirror walls, lightning dancing across his fingertips as he probed its structure. Liu Kang watched Saitama with intense focus, saying nothing. Shang Tsung's voice took on an edge. 30 seconds. Argue philosophy all you like, but the spell does not care. Yeah, it doesn't care because it's not real. Saitama turned in a slow circle, scanning the room. You're hiding somewhere. This is all just smoke and mirrors, literally. And you know what's funny? Enlighten me. You had to build this whole thing because you can't actually hurt any of us. This is all you've got: parlor tricks and being annoying. Saitama raised his fist. So I'm going to do what I always do with annoying things that waste my time. 20 seconds. Saitama punched the air. Not randomly. He'd been watching the way the smoke moved, the slight distortion in one corner where reality was thinnest. The punch didn't just hit it, connected with the fundamental framework of the illusion, the architecture of false choices and forced narratives. The mirror walls exploded outward in a cascade of dissolving fragments. The phantom civilians evaporated like mist. Scorpion's bound form flickered and vanished. The entire construct came apart because it had been held together by rules, and Saitama had just demonstrated that he didn't feel obligated to follow rules he hadn't agreed to. They stood back in the ruins. Smoke cleared to reveal the resonator, a pillar of twisted metal and bone pulsing with captured souls, and Shang Tsung himself standing 20 feet away with an expression of genuine shock. You that should not have the framework was flawless. The framework sucked, Saitama said. And you're annoying. Shang Tsung's shock curdled into rage. His hands moved in gestures that left green afterimages pulling energy from the resonator. You think brute force solves everything? You think moral complexity is something to punch through? I will show you what happens when philosophy becomes. Sub-Zero hit him with an ice blast from the side, coating the sorcerer in a shell of permafrost mid-rant. It wouldn't hold long, maybe 10 seconds against someone of Shang Tsung's caliber, but it was enough. Now, Sub-Zero said, destroy the resonator. Saitama looked at the pillar. It thrummed with dark power soul lights swirling in its core like a tiny galaxy of suffering. Normally he'd just punch it, but Liu Kang had been clear about being careful with magical stuff. Can I just hit it, or will that explode? Hit it, Liu Kang said. But precisely. He pointed to a nexus point where 3 metal bands crossed. That's the binding anchor. Break that the structure collapses without detonation. Saitama walked up to the resonator, lined up his fist with the indicated spot, and tapped it. The metal shrieked. The binding anchor shattered, and the entire pillar folded in on itself like paper in a fire. Souls burst free in a rush of light, not green anymore, but clear and silver, freed from their prison. They dispersed upward, returning to whatever rest they'd been denied. The resonator collapsed into ash and rust. Shang Tsung broke free of the ice with a snarl, but Sub-Zero was already moving. The two clashed in a flurry of ice and sorcery freeze-dodge counterspell, each testing the other's limits. It wasn't the long, dramatic duel the old tournaments would have required. It was efficient, brutal, and over in under a minute when Sub-Zero managed to get inside the sorcerer's guard and land an uppercut that sent Shang Tsung sprawling. Enough, Liu Kang said, and the authority in his voice made even Shang Tsung pause. You have lost this position. Withdraw or face judgment. You cannot escape. The sorcerer's eyes burned with hatred, but he was already pulling shadows around himself. This changes nothing. The rift remains. The ritual continues. And you, he looked at Saitama, are still exactly what we need, whether you cooperate or not. He vanished into smoke and malice. Scorpion, the real one, stepped from behind a ruined pillar. He defiled my clan's memory. And we destroyed his tool, Sub-Zero said. The offense is answered. The debt is paid. The debt will never be paid. Then at least it is lessened. Sub-Zero turned to Liu Kang. Does the seal accept this? The fire god stood silent, eyes distant, as he read threads of causality. Finally, yes, the combat was born of necessity. The victory served balance. The seal gains weight. He looked at Saitama. And you passed his test by refusing to take it. It wasn't a test. It was just him being a jerk. Sometimes, Liu Kang said with something like fondness, those are the same thing. The rift pulsed overhead, weaker now, but still present. 2 resonators destroyed, 1 remained, and with it the true confrontation waiting in Outworld's arena. 4 hours until the sale ended. The clock was ticking, and the universe watched with interest it probably shouldn't have. Outworld hit like a fist to the senses. The sky burned orange and red, 3 moons hanging at wrong angles. The arena rose from barren stone like a monument to violence itself, tiers of seating carved from obsidian chains hanging from posts. Bloodstains so old they'd become part of the architecture. Drums pounded somewhere in the depths a heartbeat that demanded sacrifice. Liu Kang's portal deposited them in an antechamber beneath the main floor. The walls sweated moisture that had nothing to do with water. Somewhere above, thousands of voices roared in a language that needed no translation. They wanted blood. "The final resonator is here," Sub-Zero said, consulting readings from a device wrapped in frost. Center of the arena floor beneath the fighting platform, shielded by, he frowned, by ambient violence. The more combat occurs above it, the stronger its protection becomes. "So we need to stop fighting to reach it," Johnny said. "But we're in an arena that exists specifically for fighting. Great." Love the irony. Sonya checked her sidearm, though they all knew it would mean less here than a sharp stick. "Who controls this place?" "Currently." Raiden's expression was grim. "Shao Khan has reclaimed it in this timeline. Liu Kang allowed him a portion of his old domain, believing it would contain his ambitions." "Has it?" "No." The drums stopped. In the silence that followed, a voice boomed across the arena, with enough force to rattle teeth. "The fire god brings tribute." Liu Kang closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, with resignation written across his features. "He knows we're here." "Of course he knows," Sub-Zero muttered. Subtlety was never an option the moment we entered his territory. A gate of spiked iron ground open, revealing stairs up to the arena floor. At the top, backlit by torches that burned green and gold, stood Shao Khan. He wore his power like armor. The massive frame, the war helm shaped like a skull. The hammer resting across his shoulders as casually as lesser beings might carry a walking stick. Behind him, the arena stretched vast and hungry. "Fire god." Shao Kahn's voice carried no need for amplification. "You grace my arena with your presence, and you bring... What is this?" His gaze found Saitama, a bald fool in a costume. "I'm just here to break something and leave," Saitama said. The crowd went silent. Speaking to Shao Khan without deference was suicide in 100 previous timelines. The warlord tilted his head, the skull helm catching torchlight. "You address the conqueror of Outworld without title, without respect." He stepped forward, each footfall a small earthquake. "You will learn your error on your knees, or you will learn it dead. I care not which." "I really don't have time for this," Saitama said, checking his watch. 3.5 hours until 6 a.m. "Can you just let us get the thing under your floor and go?" Shao Kahn laughed. It started as a rumble and built to a roar that shook dust from the ancient stone. "Magnificent. You do not beg, do not posture, do not understand even the concept of fear." He swung the hammer down from his shoulder, planting it with a crack that split the floor. "I have killed gods who showed more sense. I will enjoy breaking you before this crowd." "We're not here for your entertainment," Liu Kang said, stepping forward. "The resonator beneath your arena threatens all realms, including this one." "Then it should have been hidden somewhere else." Shao Kahn's smile was visible even through the helm. "But it is here in my domain, which means you must ask my permission. And I grant permission only to those who prove themselves worthy in combat." The crowd erupted, chanting words in dozens of languages that all meant the same thing: blood, victory, death. Sub-Zero moved beside Saitama, voice low. He needs the spectacle. His power in Outworld is built on displays of dominance. If we simply take what we came for, we ought to undermine his authority in front of his people. So he'll kill civilians to re-establish it after we leave. Hundreds, possibly thousands. Saitama looked at the crowd, not warriors, he realized, but people. Scared people. People who'd learned to love violence because the alternative was to be its victim. He looked back at Shao Khan. Fine. One fight. Then we get the resonator. One fight. Shao Kahn's voice carried to every tear. The stranger accepts, let the trial begin. Gongs crashed. The crowd's roar became something physical, a wall of sound and hunger. Shao Khan advanced to the center of the arena, hammer swinging in lazy circles that hummed with compressed power. Each rotation left after images in the air, green energy bleeding from the weapon's head. Saitama walked out to meet him. No stance, no preparation. Just a guy in a yellow suit standing across from a warlord who'd conquered worlds. Your name before I end you, Shao Khan demanded. Saitama. Saitama. I will remember it for the 5 seconds it takes to crush your skull, he charged. For something so massive, Shao Khan moved with terrifying speed. The hammer came around in an overhead arc designed to pulverize stone to shatter mountains, to make believers out of skeptics. It hit the arena floor where Saitama had been standing with force that created a crater 10 feet wide. Saitama stood 5 feet to the left, hands in his pockets. You missed. Shao Khan spun backhand swing. Saitama ducked under it without apparent effort. The hammer's passing created a sonic boom that shattered windows in the arena's upper tiers. Stand still. Why? The warlord unleashed a combination that would have liquefied a lesser opponent overhead. Smash, sweep, charge, hammer throw, soul blast. Each attack flowing into the next with practiced brutality. Saitama avoided them all with minimal movement, looking increasingly bored. Are you going to fight? Shao Khan snarled, or just dance? I'm letting you have your show. Isn't that what you wanted? I wanted combat. I wanted to hear bones break and see blood spill. I wanted... Saitama flicked his finger. It was the same motion he'd used to flick away a mosquito. His middle finger connected with Shao Kahn's chest plate. Not the hammer, not even a full punch, just a contemptuous flick, and the warlord rocketed backward. He hit the far arena wall with enough force to embed himself 3 feet into solid obsidian hammer, clattering away across the blood-stained sand. The crowd went dead silent. Shao Khan pulled himself from the wall armor, cracked, breathing hard. For the first time in living memory, fear touched his eyes. What are you? Someone who's late for a sale. Saitama turned to Liu Kang. That count. The fire god's expression was troubled. It counts. But good. Saitama walked toward the center of the arena. So where's this resonator thing? Sub-Zero was already moving ice forming around his hands as he carved through the floor's protective wards. The resonator lay beneath, pulsing weakly, now that the ambient violence had stopped. With Shao Khan defeated, the crowd had gone quiet, shocked into silence. That was the problem. Liu Kang felt it in the threads of causality. The battle had no weight, no investment, no cost. The combat seal would register it as barely more than an interrupted brawl. The ritual was failing. Wait, he called, but Sub-Zero had already exposed the resonator. Saitama reached down and yanked it free with both hands, the complex magical device coming apart in his grip like a poorly made toy. The third resonator died. Souls streamed upward. The rift overhead flickered, weakened, but not closed. And in the Netherrealm, Shang Tsung smiled. "Perfect," he whispered to Quan Chi. "They have defeated our distractions and feel victorious. Now we give them the true horror." Quan Chi gestured, and beneath multiple sights across Earthrealm Outworld and the spaces between things, long dead, began to move. Souls unwillingly donated, bodies sculpted from nightmare, bound together with purpose that transcended simple destruction. The soul abomination's birth was beginning, and with it the final test: could the variable be made useful, or would he simply need to be discarded once his presence had torn reality open wide enough for new laws to take root? Back in the arena, Liu Kang watched the rift pulse with renewed hunger. His fears were confirmed. "It's not enough," he said quietly. "We destroyed the resonators, but we didn't give the seal the weight it needed. The fights ended too quickly. Had too little cost." "Then what happens?" Sonya asked. "Then the enemy adapts. And they will create something we cannot end quickly." As if in answer, the rift screamed. And something vast, something wrong, something assembled from thousands of stolen souls, began to push its way through. The thing emerging from the rift wasn't fully visible yet, just suggestions of mass limbs that bent, wrong faces that appeared and disappeared in the roiling green. Energy voices layered so thick they became static. Liu Kang raised both hands, flames forming barriers that wouldn't stop what was coming, but might slow it. "Back to Earthrealm," he commanded. "Now." The portal opened in fire and urgency. They tumbled through landing in what Sonya recognized as a Special Forces Forward Operating Base warehouse district, reinforced walls equipment that hummed with borrowed Edenian technology. The rift followed them, punching through reality above the base like a malignant star. "It's accelerating," Raiden said, electricity arcing between his fingers in agitated patterns. "The resonators were limiters. By destroying them, we did exactly what they wanted." Liu Kang finished bitter. "We removed the controls. Now it feeds unrestricted." Sub-Zero was already at a terminal, pulling up data his Lin Kuei had gathered over the past hours. Maps, energy readings, casualty reports. His face grew progressively darker as he absorbed the information. 14 sites across Earthrealm where localized violence has spiked in the past 6 hours, he said. Street fights, domestic disputes, even arguments that turned physical, all within the rift's expanding influence. "It's feeding on everything," Sonya breathed. "Not everything. Specifically, it feeds on death that occurs within combat context. But its definition of combat has grown liberal." Sub-Zero pulled up another screen. "Here, a bar fight in Moscow. 4 dead. There a mugging in Sao Paulo. 2 dead. The rift doesn't care about scale or meaning anymore. Every violent death under its shadow fuels it." Johnny had gone pale. "How many total?" 47 confirmed dead. Unknown number injured. Sub-Zero closed the screen. "And that's just in 6 hours. Saitama, who'd been standing quietly near the wall, spoke up. "So we don't fight. We just stop." "We can't," Liu Kang said. "The abomination is already forming. It will attack regardless of our choices. And when it does, we defend ourselves, and the rift grows stronger from the combat. Classic forced escalation." Sub-Zero's tactical mind was already racing ahead. They've created a scenario where inaction and action both lead to the same outcome. "Not quite the same," came a voice from nowhere and everywhere. The temperature dropped. Shadows peeled away from the walls, coalescing into forms Shang Tsung and Quan Chi not physically present, but projected through sorcery. Their images flickered with sick green light expressions of satisfaction barely concealed. "You've done well," Shang Tsung said, inclining his head in mock appreciation. "Destroying the resonators, engaging in ritual combat, even entertaining Shao Khan, all according to design." "Explain," Liu Kang demanded, and his voice carried the weight of divine command. "Gladly. The rift was never meant to simply tear realms apart. Too crude, too temporary." Shang Tsung paced within his projection hands, behind his back like a lecturer. "No, we built it to study an anomaly, to understand what happens when something that shouldn't exist persists anyway." His gaze fixed on Saitama. "You, the variable. You exist in defiance of every law that governs reality. No destiny binds you. No fate claims you. You simply are despite the universe's insistence that you should not be." "That's a lot of words for calling me weird," Saitama said. "You are more than weird. You are useful." Quan Chi stepped forward, in his projection skull-marked face gleaming. "The rift was designed to anchor itself to your presence. Every moment you exist within this timeline, it grows stronger. Not from combat that's merely fuel, but from the fundamental strain of reality trying to accommodate you." Raiden's eyes widened. "You're using him as a wedge, to pry open the new era's foundations." "Precisely," Shang Tsung smiled. "Liu Kang reshaped the timeline, imposed new laws, reset the balance. But his new era has a flaw: it cannot account for true anomalies. It can only bend and bend and bend until it breaks." Liu Kang finished, voice hollow. "And in that breaking, you write new rules. We restore old rules, rules where power determines reality, where strength shapes law, where those with vision need not bow to cosmic balance." The sorcerer's projection expanded, showing glimpses of the abomination taking shape. "The creature we've built is designed specifically to fight you. Not to win, we're not fools, but to force extended combat. Every second you battle it, every exchange of power widens the cracks." "So even if I destroy it," Saitama said slowly, "you get what you want. Now you understand. The only way to deny us is to do nothing. To let the abomination rampage while you stand idle. To watch people die." Shang Tsung's smile widened. "But you won't do that, will you? Because despite being beyond law, beyond fate, beyond meaning, you have that most mortal of weaknesses: you care." Saitama's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. "You're using innocent people as bait. We're using reality itself as bait. The people are simply emphasis. I'm going to punch you now. You can't. We're not here. These are projections." Quan Chi gestured, and the images began to fade. "The abomination will arrive shortly. Fight it, or don't both outcomes serve us? Though I suspect we know which you'll choose." "One more thing," Shang Tsung said as his image guttered. "The abomination is built from souls taken unwillingly. Innocence bound into its frame. Destroy it too completely, and you destroy them. But leave it intact, and it feeds on everything around it. Another lovely dilemma. Do try to solve it quickly. You have a sail to catch, don't you?" They vanished, laughter echoing in the spaces between spaces. The room was silent, except for the hum of equipment and the distant pulse of the rift. Johnny was the first to speak, voice strained. "So we're screwed no matter what we do." "No," Liu Kang said, though he didn't sound convinced. There's always a path. We simply haven't seen it yet. The path is obvious, Sub-Zero said. We minimize combat duration, strike with overwhelming precision, end the engagement before the rift can capitalize on extended fighting. Except the abomination will be designed to prevent that. Raiden looked at Saitama. They know what you can do. They will have prepared accordingly. Saitama walked to the door, looking up at the rift through reinforced windows. They said it's made of innocent people. Souls bound unwillingly, yes, Liu Kang confirmed. Quan Chi's specialty. Bodies woven from stolen life, animated by suffering. Can they be freed? If we can identify the binding mechanism, some kind of anchor that holds the collective together. The fire god moved to stand beside him. But finding it mid-combat, while the creature actively tries to kill us, while the rift feeds on every exchange. I'll find it, Saitama said simply, and I'll break it without breaking them. The margin for error is non-existent. Yeah. Saitama checked his watch. 3 hours, 12 minutes until 6 a.m. But I'm pretty good at not making errors when it matters. Outside, the sky split further. The abomination was coming, and with it the final test. Could the man who broke his limiter break a trap designed by sorcerers who'd had hours to study his every movement? The answer would determine whether the new era survived or whether reality bent until something darker could slip through the cracks. It came through the rift like a birth in reverse, something that should have stayed unborn, dragged screaming into a world that didn't want it. The abomination was tall, maybe 15 feet, but height was the least wrong thing about it. Its frame was built from bone and blackened metal, fused in ways that suggested no understanding of anatomy or mercy. Faces pushed through its surface like drowning victims under ice mouths, open in eternal screams. Arms sprouted at wrong angles, some ending in hands, others in blades, others in nothing at all. At its center, visible through a cage of ribs that might have come from a dozen different species, something pulsed with sick light. Not a heart. More like a knot, tangled ropes of energy and soul matter compressed into a nexus point that held the whole nightmare together. That was the anchor. Had to be. The abomination hit the ground outside the base with impact that registered on seismic monitors 3 states away. It stood limbs finding balance through trial and error head, if you could call it a head turning to survey its surroundings. When it found Saitama through the reinforced windows, every face embedded in its body focused at once. Defensive positions, Sonya commanded, and her team moved with practiced efficiency. Barriers went up. Weapon systems came online. None of it would matter, and they all knew it. But training was training. Liu Kang stepped forward, flames igniting. I will attempt to slow it. Raiden, coordinate evacuation of nearby sectors. Sub-Zero. Already mapping weak points, the Lin Kuei said, eyes tracking the creature's movements. There. The anchor is exposed, but protected by the body itself. Any approach requires. The abomination screamed. Not with one voice, but hundreds layered and overlapping, each carrying the terror of someone who died badly. The sound shattered windows and made ears bleed. Then it charged. For something so massive and wrong, it moved fast. One moment it stood at the crater's edge, the next, it was through the base's outer wall, concrete and rebar folding like paper. A massive arm swung down toward the command center. Saitama met it outside. He'd moved through the wall himself, or possibly just through the hole the creature made, hard to tell with his speed. His fist connected with the descending limb and stopped it cold. The shockwave from the impact blew out what remained of the windows and sent loose equipment tumbling. "You should leave," Saitama said to the thing. "I don't want to hurt the people inside you." The abomination responded by growing. New limbs erupted from its torso, each one lashing out with crystallized soul energy that cut through steel like mist. Saitama dodged, weaved, caught one blade limb, and tried to break it gently. It regenerated instantly, bone knitting back together, with sounds like ice cracking in reverse. The anchor pulsed, feeding energy into damaged sections, rewriting injury into wholeness. "It heals," Sub-Zero observed from his position on the rooftop, ice already forming around his hands. "Every wound you inflict, it undoes." "Not heals," Liu Kang corrected, reading the flows of soul magic. "Resurrects. Each time you destroy a piece, it pulls from the soul's inside to rebuild. Quan Chi designed it as a perpetual engine. Destroy it, and it rises stronger." Saitama landed a solid punch to what might have been the creature's knee. The joint exploded in a spray of bone fragments and dark fluid. The abomination stumbled, fell. The anchor flared. The knee rebuilt itself in seconds, new bone spiraling into existence, fresh meat wrapping around it like time running backward. The creature stood, and now it was taller, stronger, more limbs. "Okay," Saitama said, backing up slightly. "That's annoying." The abomination pressed its advantage limbs, striking, in combinations that shouldn't work but did overhead slash ground. Sweep projectile burst of bone shards, each attack flowing into the next. Saitama avoided most of them, tanked the few that connected without visible damage. But he wasn't counterattacking now. He was watching. "The anchor," he called up to Sub-Zero. "Can you hit it from here?" "I can try. Give me an opening." A blade limb swept towards Sub-Zero's position. He dropped through a hole he'd prepared in the roof ice clone, taking his place to absorb the strike. The decoy shattered, and the real Sub-Zero came up behind cover, launching a spear of ice toward the anchor. The abomination caught it, not with hands, but with a new limb that grew specifically to intercept, wrapping around the ice and absorbing it into its mass. Now, ice crawled across portions of its skin, incorporated into the design, like a tumor accepted by the body. "It adapts," Raiden observed from his position, coordinating evacuations. "Each attack teaches it. Each defense makes it stronger." "Perfect," Johnny muttered from behind a barrier. "It's a dark soul's boss in real life." Saitama tried a different approach speed. He blurred into motion, striking the abomination from 12 different angles in under a second, each hit targeted at non-vital areas, each one designed to disable rather than destroy. Limbs fell. The torso cracked, facial features embedded in its surface went slack. The anchor pulled them all back. Every severed piece flew through the air like magnetized metal, snapping back into place. Where there had been one abomination, now there were suggestions of others, phantom forms flickering around it, souls stirring toward independence before being yanked back into the collective. "You're feeding it," Liu Kang warned. "Every engagement gives it data. It's learning what you can do. Then I'll do something it can't learn from." Saitama gathered himself, drawing back for a serious punch. "No!" Liu Kang's shout carried divine authority. "That level of force will destroy the anchor, yes, but it will also destroy every soul bound within. They'll be obliterated, not freed." Saitama froze mid-wind-up. The abomination didn't. It lunged, 6 limbs converging on his position with enough force to level buildings. He dodged at the last instant, the attacks cratering the ground where he'd stood. "Then how?" he called back. "The anchor must be separated from the collective without breaking, surgically removed, not destroyed." Liu Kang launched a wave of fire to buy time, the flames washing over the abomination and doing exactly nothing. "But I don't know how to—" A limb caught Saitama across the torso. Not damage, his costume didn't even tear, but the impact carried him backward 50 feet through 2 walls. He landed in a roll, came up, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, genuine frustration. Not at the difficulty, at the restriction. He could end this in 1 hit, maybe 2 if he wanted to be careful about collateral damage. But those people inside the monster, they didn't ask to be there. Didn't deserve to be ammunition in someone else's scheme. The abomination pressed through the breach it had created, growing with each second, now 20 feet tall and still expanding. Faces in its surface wept blood, screamed without sound, begged with eyes that couldn't close. "We need a plan," Sonya said into her comm, coordinating fire from her team. Their bullets did nothing, but they kept shooting anyway, because doing nothing felt worse. Sub-Zero was already moving, mind-racing through possibilities. The anchor is the binding point. If we can overload it, force it to pull too much too fast, it might rupture from internal pressure rather than external force. "How?" Raiden asked. "By making it resurrect faster than it can stabilize. Multiple simultaneous destructions across the body. Force it to rebuild everything at once." Sub-Zero's eyes found Saitama. "But that requires coordination, precise timing, and someone fast enough to strike multiple points in the same instant." Saitama looked at his hands, looked at the monster, looked at the anchor pulsing in its chest. "I can do precise," he said. "But I need to know where to hit all the points at once." "I can map them," Sub-Zero said. "Give me 30 seconds." The abomination roared, and the sound carried a new quality hunger. It had been feeding on ambient violence, yes, but now it wanted something more direct. It wanted him, the variable, the anomaly whose presence justified its creation. Soul energy gathered in its core, building towards something catastrophic. "We don't have 30 seconds, Liu Kang said. The abomination unleashed a wave of compressed death souls, weaponized, screaming as they flew, each one a life stolen and repurposed. The blast carved through the base, through the street beyond, through anything solid enough to have been there. Saitama caught it. Not with his hands, with his presence. He stood in the path of the attack and simply refused to move. The soul wave hit him and stopped energy piling up against an immovable point, spreading around him like water around a stone. The screaming souls passed on either side, harmless now, dissipating into the air. In that moment, energy piled against his frame, hundreds of stolen lives. Recognizing something in him that wasn't like their tormentors, Saitama understood what he needed to do. "The anchor's connected to all of them," he said quietly. "So if I can touch it, I can feel where the connections are." "Touch it." Liu Kang stared. "You'd have to get inside the creature. Through layers of hostile body, through defenses specifically designed to—" "Yeah." Saitama looked at the abomination, at the faces trapped in its surface, at the anchor pulsing like a diseased heart. "I'll need you guys to keep it busy for about 10 seconds. 10 seconds against that?" Johnny shook his head. "Man, you're optimistic. I've done harder things." Saitama cracked his knuckles. "Once I'm in, I'll know what to break. But I can't let it know what I'm doing, or it'll adapt again." Sub-Zero understood first. "You're going to let it hit you. Just once, hard enough to think it won. Then while it's distracted—" "Insane," Raiden said. But he was already calling lightning, ready to play his part. "Tactical," Sub-Zero corrected, ice spreading across the ground in intricate patterns. "If it works." "It'll work," Saitama said with the confidence of someone who'd broken every limit that mattered. "But it's going to look really bad for a few seconds. Try not to panic." The abomination sensed something prey about to become predator, or predator pretending to be prey. It gathered itself every limb, every scrap of stolen power, focusing on the bald man in the yellow suit who'd proven too difficult to kill. This time it wouldn't hold back. Neither would he. But only one of them knew the real plan. The abomination gathered itself for the killing blow. And everyone with tactical sense understood what was about to happen. Saitama would take the hit, survive it, because nothing short of conceptual erasure could kill him and use the opening to get inside the creature's defenses. It was a plan that worked on paper. Reality rarely cared about paper. Liu Kang felt at first a shift in the rift's behavior, like a predator changing hunting strategies. Wait. Something's... The rift pulsed, and everything changed. Soul magic erupted from the abomination in waves not directed at Saitama, but around him, saturating the space he occupied. It wasn't an attack in the traditional sense. It was an environment, a field of influence that treated reality like clay, and began to reshape it according to ancient hungry rules. Saitama felt it immediately. Not pain. Not exactly. More like pressure, the sensation of being pulled in directions that didn't have names of space, trying to fold him into configurations that bodies weren't meant to achieve. His cape snapped backward toward the rift, as if caught in a gale fabric straining. The air grew thick, resistant, like moving through syrup, made of static and whispers. Voices pressed against his mind. Not words, just the texture of screaming, of pleading, of thousands of deaths compressed into white noise. It scraped along the inside of his skull like fingernails on glass he didn't know he had. He stopped advancing, frowned, reached up to press a hand against his temple. "That's annoying," he said, and his voice carried genuine irritation. Sub-Zero saw it from his vantage, the way Saitama's movements became fractionally slower, the way his cape twisted as if grabbed by invisible hands, the slight tension that appeared in his usually relaxed posture. The soul magic is affecting him. "Impossible," Raiden breathed. "He exists outside. He exists outside fate and destiny, not outside all influence." Liu Kang's flames burned brighter, fighting against the expanding field. The magic isn't controlling him. It's creating interference, like static on a radio or turbulence. Saitama supplied, shaking his head as if clearing water from his ears. "It's not hurting me. Just annoying. Like a really loud noise you can't block out." The abomination sensed weakness. It pressed forward, layering more soul magic into the space, drawing from the bound innocence within its frame. The pressure intensified. Saitama's cape jerked harder toward the rift. Small objects around him, loose rubble shell casings, began to orbit in lazy circles caught in the distortion. "Can you still move?" Liu Kang called. "Yeah, just pisses me off." Saitama took a step forward, pushing through the resistance. It was like walking through chest-deep water, except the water was made of violated physics and stolen lives. "I really hate magic stuff." "The rift is trying to pull you in," Raiden observed, tracking the energy flows. "Not your body, your essence, for lack of a better term. It's attempting to use you as a living anchor point. If it succeeds, reality tears open wide enough for the sorcerers to rewrite fundamental laws," Liu Kang finished. "Saitama, you need to end this quickly. The longer you're exposed to the field, the more the rift can key itself to your presence." "Working on it." Saitama pushed forward another step, but the interference was growing. Not stronger, he wasn't getting weaker, but more pervasive. Like trying to concentrate during a fire alarm or think clearly while someone screamed in your ear. Technically possible, but deeply unpleasant. The abomination struck. 6 limbs converged on Saitama's position, each one trailing soul fire that turned air to ash. He dodged the first 3, caught the 4th, but the 5th clipped his shoulder. No damage, his costume didn't even scuff. But the impact carried magic, and magic carried interference. And suddenly the static in his head spiked to a shriek. He stumbled. Just for a second, just a half step of imbalance, but it was enough. The abomination's remaining limbs wrapped around him like a cage, pulling him off his feet, drawing him toward its center where the anchor pulsed with diseased light. Faces in its surface turned to watch some hungry others, warning all screaming without sound. "No!" Sonya shouted. But what could they do? Shooting it was pointless. Getting close meant entering the soul field's radius, and none of them could withstand what Saitama was barely tolerating. Sub-Zero acted anyway. He dropped from the rooftop ice, forming into a slide that carried him toward the creature at impossible speed. His hands moved in precise patterns, each gesture leaving frozen equations in the air, calculations made manifest tactical mathematics given form. "Target the joints," he called. "Force it to regenerate, buy him time." Raiden's lightning came down in a controlled strike, searing through one of the limbs holding Saitama. It severed fell and immediately began to regrow. But for 3 seconds, the grip loosened. 3 seconds was enough. Saitama twisted, broke the remaining limbs with controlled force, and landed in a crouch. His expression had changed. Not to anger, not to fear, but to the look of someone dealing with a persistent headache who'd just decided they were done being polite about it. "Okay," he said, voice flat. "New plan." The abomination regenerated its limbs, grew 2 more for good measure, and pressed the soul field even harder. The rift above pulsed in time with the anchor feeding power down, creating a feedback loop that made the air shimmer with wrongness. Liu Kang could see the strain now not on Saitama's body, but on the space around him. Reality itself was buckling under the contradiction. Here was something that shouldn't exist being pulled by forces designed to exploit exactly that fact. The universe tried to reconcile the impossibility and failed, creating ripples that spread outward in visible waves. "If this continues," the fire god said quietly to Raiden, "we risk cascading failure. The new era's foundations will crack, not from Saitama's power, but from the cosmic strain of trying to accommodate him under active assault. Then we end it now." Raiden gathered electricity, preparing for something desperate. "Wait." Liu Kang held up a hand. "Look at him. Really look." Saitama wasn't struggling anymore. He was watching, eyes tracking the soul field's patterns, observing how the magic moved, noting which parts of the abomination's body drew power and which parts distributed it. The interference was still there, his cape still whipped toward the rift, the air still screamed, but he'd stopped fighting it. He was using it. The anchor pulls from the souls to regenerate. Saitama said, mostly to himself, but loud enough to carry. So the connections run from the center to every part of the body. Like roots from a tree or wires in a machine. He took a step forward, ignoring the resistance. "And if I can see where the energy flows..." He moved. Not away from the abomination, into it. The creature tried to stop him, limbs converging, soul fire erupting, every defense it had learned from previous exchanges, deployed at once. Saitama walked through it like a man walking through a bead curtain, aware of the obstruction, unbothered by its presence. Limbs that struck him shattered. Fire that touched him guttered. The soul field screamed and pulled and tried to make him stop, but he decided he was done being stopped. He reached the torso, placed a hand on the outer layer of bone and corrupted metal. Paused. "I can feel them," he said softly. "All of them. Scared, angry. They don't want to be here." "The souls are prisoners," Liu Kang confirmed. "Bound against their will." "Yeah." Saitama's other hand joined the first fingers, pressing gently against the abomination's surface. Through the bone, through the magic, through the layers of horror, he could sense the connections, hundreds of threads running from the anchor to the trapped essences, each one a chain that looked like life support but functioned as leash. "I can see the knot now, where everything ties together." The abomination bucked, trying to throw him off. He didn't move, couldn't be moved. Physics itself seemed to understand that this was no longer a negotiable situation. How many connection points? Sub-Zero called, still maintaining his position, ice spreading across the ground in patterns that helped stabilize the local space. Saitama's eyes tracked invisible lines, calculating. 73 major nodes, maybe 200 minor ones. They're all connected to the anchor, but... He paused, adjusting his perception. The anchor's connected to something else. Something outside. The rift, Liu Kang realized. The anchor isn't self-sustaining. It's being fed from the breach itself. So if I break it here, the backlash could destroy the souls rather than free them. The energy has to dissipate safely, which means... The fire god's expression shifted through several calculations in rapid succession. Which means the rift and the anchor must separate before the anchor breaks. The timing window is small. Saitama finished. Got it. So I need to be really precise. Johnny Cage, crouched behind a barrier and recording the whole thing for reasons he'd examine later, whispered, "He's going to do surgery on a demon while it tries to kill him. In a soul magic hurricane." "Efficiency," Sub-Zero said with something that might have been respect. The abomination realized what was happening. Every face in its surface focused on Saitama at once, hundreds of expressions unified in desperate understanding. The prey wasn't prey. It never had been. This was a predator wearing the skin of someone harmless, and now the disguise was coming off. It pulled everything it had, every soul, every scrap of stolen power, every technique learned from their brief engagement, and compressed it into a single attack. The anchor flared so bright, it hurt to look at drawing energy, not just from the bound innocence, but from the rift itself, pulling down power that reality itself objected to. The attack came down like a guillotine made of condensed death. Saitama looked up at it with the expression of someone who'd made their decision and found it satisfactory. "Liu Kang," he said calmly, "when I break this, you need to catch the souls, all of them. Don't let them get pulled back into the rift. I will do what I can. You'll do it." Saitama's voice carried absolute certainty. "Because if you don't, then all of this was pointless and I missed my sail for nothing." The attack descended. Reality screamed. The rift pulsed its approval. And Saitama, one hand still pressed to the abomination's chest, drove his other fist forward with surgical precision. The punch wasn't like his others. No shockwave. No crater. No visible display of force that would make gods flinch. It was precise, a scalpel, not a hammer delivered with the kind of control that came from understanding exactly what needed to break and what needed to remain intact. His fist passed through layers of corrupted flesh and bone, as if they'd already agreed to part. The abomination's defenses, all those learned adaptations and reactive armor, meant nothing. Not because they were weak, but because Saitama had stopped thinking of them as obstacles and started thinking of them as layers to navigate. His knuckles connected with the anchor. For one infinite moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened at once. The anchor didn't explode. It unraveled each thread of soul energy that bound the collective, coming loose in a cascade that spread faster than thought. Saitama felt them all: the construction worker from Sao Paulo, the student from Beijing, the grandmother from Cairo, the child from Detroit. Hundreds of stolen lives, each one a node in the network, each one screaming to be free. He didn't pull them. That would have torn them. He pushed the anchor gently, surgically away from the rift's feeding line, like disconnecting a battery from a machine that had been draining it dry. The anchor came loose, its connection to the breach severed, and suddenly it was just a knot of energy without external power. That's when Liu Kang moved. The fire god's hands traced patterns that left burning equations in the air, each symbol a command written in the language reality couldn't ignore. "I name you free," he said, and his voice carried the authority of someone who'd rewritten timelines. "I name you returned. I name you home." The souls burst from the collapsing abomination like birds from a cage. They were still screaming. But now the screams carried different weight, not horror, but release. Each one a light rising, seeking whatever rest they'd been denied. Liu Kang caught them in webs of golden fire, gentle as silk, cradling them as they dispersed upward. Not back to the rift, not into some new prison, just away. To wherever souls were meant to go when sorcerers stopped playing with them. The abomination's body collapsed. Without the anchor, without the binding force, it was just meat and bone and stolen material. It fell in sections, limbs detaching torso, crumbling the whole nightmare structure, coming apart like a sandcastle hit by waves. Saitama stepped back as it dissolved around him, cape settling against his shoulders as the soul field dissipated. The interference was gone. The pulling sensation, the static, the voices, all of it faded as the rift lost its primary fuel source. Above them, the breach itself shuddered. Now, Raiden called lightning already forming. While it's weakened, Sub-Zero's ice spread across the ground in geometric patterns. Each frozen line, a calculation, a mathematical argument about how reality should work. Scorpion added hellfire not to destroy, but to contain, creating a barrier of opposing forces. Johnny and Sonya's team, positioned at key points, activated Edenian stabilizers that hummed with borrowed technology. Liu Kang stood at the center of it all, hands raised, and spoke one word: seal. The combat seal, fed by every battle they'd fought, every trial, completed every genuine exchange of skill and purpose, finally had enough weight. It activated not with a bang, but with a sound like a door, closing final, decisive, complete. The rift resisted. It was built to hunger, to expand, to consume. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi had invested too much to let it close quietly. From within the Netherrealm, they pushed back, feeding the breach with every scrap of power they could spare. For 10 seconds, reality hung in balance. Then Saitama looked up at the rift and said very clearly, "Close." He didn't shout it, didn't put force behind it, just stated it as a fact, the way you'd tell someone the time or point out that rain was wet. But something in his voice, the absolute certainty of someone who'd stopped asking permission from the universe, made reality listen. The rift collapsed. Not slowly, not fighting. It just folded in on itself like paper in a fire-green light, consuming itself, the wound sealing with a sound of rushing air and then silence. The breach was gone. The Netherrealm's connection was severed. The soul magic that had saturated the area drained away like water through sand. The sky above Earthrealm was just sky again, gray clouds, distant stars normal and mundane and perfect. Everyone stood in stunned silence. Johnny's camera was still recording. Sonya's team lowered their weapons slowly, as if afraid sudden movement might break whatever spell had just concluded. Scorpion stared at where the rift had been, flames guttering on his frame. Sub-Zero spoke first, voice carefully neutral. "That shouldn't have worked, but it did," Liu Kang said, and there was wonder in his tone. Wonder and something like relief so profound it threatened to become laughter. "The seal held. The souls are free. The breach is closed." He looked at Saitama. "You did it." "We did it," Saitama corrected, brushing dust off his gloves. "I just hit the thing. You guys did the actual magic part. You hit it exactly right, at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right force." Raiden studied him with the expression of someone reconsidering fundamental assumptions. "You are either the luckiest being in creation, or he's so far beyond our understanding that his close enough surpasses our perfect." Sub-Zero finished. "Either way, I'm grateful he was on our side." Scorpion approached his movements careful. The Spectre looked at Saitama for a long moment, then bowed not deeply but with genuine respect. "You honored the souls. You could have destroyed everything in your path, but you chose precision. That is rare." "They didn't ask to be there," Saitama said. "Didn't seem fair to kill them for someone else's plan." "No, it was not fair." Scorpion straightened. "You have my gratitude, stranger." Before Saitama could respond, space folded and Shang Tsung's voice hissed from a rapidly closing shadow portal. "This isn't over. The variable remains. The anomaly persists. We will find another way." "No, you won't," Liu Kang said, and his tone carried finality. "I have seen the threads. Your ritual failed. The anchor is broken. The new era's foundations are intact, and now I know what to watch for." His eyes blazed. "You have lost Shang Tsung. Accept it with what little grace you possess." The portal snapped shut, cutting off whatever retort the sorcerer had prepared. "Will they try again?" Sonya asked. "Eventually. They are ambitious, if nothing else." Liu Kang's flames dimmed exhaustion, showing through now that the crisis had passed. But not soon. This failure will cost them decades of preparation. We have time to fortify, to prepare proper defenses. "Good." Sonya looked at Saitama. "Because I don't think we could handle a repeat performance." Johnny lowered his camera, grinning despite everything. "You know what the weirdest part of this whole thing was? Not the demon. Not the soul magic. Not the hole in reality." He looked at Saitama. "It's that you really were just worried about a grocery sale the whole time. Like genuinely. That wasn't an act." "It wasn't an act," Saitama confirmed, checking his watch. "And I've got..." His eyes widened slightly. 23 minutes. Liu Kang smiled genuinely this time and raised his hands. Fire traced itself into a circle, forming a portal that showed a street corner at dawn, a grocery store with lights on a banner advertising, "Mega sale ends 6 a.m. "I believe I owe you swift passage," the fire god said. "Consider it payment for services rendered." Saitama walked toward the portal, then paused. He turned back to look at the group warriors and gods and tactical specialists who'd spent the night fighting reality itself. Thanks for the help. The magic stuff was complicated. I wouldn't have known what to do. You would have figured it out, Sub-Zero said. Eventually. Probably after leveling half the planet. Probably. Saitama agreed without shame. He stepped toward the portal, then stopped one more time. Hey, Liu Kang. Yes. Next time someone tries to summon the strongest thing they can find, maybe double-check the spell, just in case. Noted. Liu Kang's expression was unreadable, though I suspect the universe itself will remember this incident and adjust accordingly. You may have difficulty being summoned accidentally again. Good. Saitama stepped through the portal and stopped on a sidewalk in front of a brightly lit grocery store morning sun just starting to paint the sky orange. Other shoppers hurried past, focused on deals and checkout lines and the mundane urgency of limited time offers. No one noticed the man in the yellow suit materialize from a circle of flame that disappeared as quickly as it formed. Saitama checked his watch, 5:47 a.m. 13 minutes to spare. He walked through the automatic doors, grabbed a basket, and headed for the produce section. Behind him in a dimension he'd never visit again, unless someone made another really stupid mistake. The timeline settled back into balance. The new era held. Reality, having bent as far as it was willing to bend, snapped back into shape. In the Netherrealm, Shang Tsung stared at the ruins of his ritual chamber and began planning his next move, because sorcerers who'd lived this long didn't know how to quit. In Earthrealm, Liu Kang returned to his duties with the weight of new knowledge. There were beings that existed not in defiance of order, but simply adjacent to it. Beings that couldn't be controlled, couldn't be predicted, couldn't be anything except what they were. And in a grocery store in Japan, Saitama loaded his basket with vegetables on sale, paid at the checkout, and walked home through streets that would never know how close they'd come to being unmade. He paused at his apartment door, bags in hand, and looked up at the sky. Normal clouds, normal sunrise, normal everything. Good, he said to no one in particular. Inside, he put away the groceries, made breakfast, and sat down to eat. The TV was showing news something about unexplained seismic events worldwide, quickly dismissed as natural phenomena. No mention of rifts or abominations or battles that had shaped the fate of multiple realms. Which was fine. Saitama had never needed credit. He just needed to not miss the sale. His phone buzzed a text from Genos asking if he was free for training later. Saitama typed back a simple, "Sure," then set the phone aside and focused on his meal. Outside, the world continued. Heroes responded to minor threats. Villains plotted minor schemes. Life went on with the blissful ignorance that came from not knowing how fragile the boundaries between realities truly were. And in that normalcy, in that perfect mundane continuation of existence, there was a kind of victory worth more than any formal recognition. Saitama finished his breakfast, cleaned his dishes, and went to take a nap. After all, saving the multiverse was exhausting work. And there was absolutely nothing on TV.